The ballroom fell silent as the champagne glass shattered against marble. Elena Martinez, 12 years old, stood frozen in her cleaning uniform while 1,000 eyes turned toward her. The liquid pooled at the feet of Richard Ashford, the fifth richest man in America, who just finished telling his annual joke about the impossible safe in his study. He was laughing when Elena's mop bucket tipped over. He wasn't laughing anymore. "Get that child out of my sight," someone muttered from the crowd of glittering gowns and tailored suits. But Elena barely heard them. She was staring at the projection screen behind Ashford, where his massive titanium safe was displayed as part of his speech. Numbers and symbols flickered in her mind like fireflies. She saw the pattern everyone else had missed. Her mother gripped her shoulder, pulling her backward toward the kitchen, whispering frantic apologies in Spanish. Elena's eyes never left that screen. This was how it started. But to understand how a girl who cleaned toilets would crack a code that had stumped MIT professors and CIA codebreakers, you'd have to go back 3 months earlier, to the day Elena's world collapsed. Her father died on a Tuesday. Heart attack. No warning. Just gone. Miguel Martinez had been a mathematics professor at the community college, beloved by students, brilliant in ways the world never recognized because he taught in a neighborhood people drove past without looking. He left behind notebooks filled with equations, a daughter who inherited his gift for patterns, and a wife who inherited his debts. Maria Martinez took 3 jobs to keep their apartment. Morning shift at the Ashford estate, afternoon cleaning offices downtown, nights at the hospital. Elena watched her mother disappear into exhaustion, watched the light drain from her eyes, watched bills pile up on their kitchen table like accusations. The eviction notice came on a Thursday. "We have 2 weeks, her mother said, not meeting Elena's eyes. "I'm trying, Mija, I'm trying so hard." Elena knew. She saw her mother's hands, raw from bleach and constant work. She heard her crying in the bathroom when she thought Elena was asleep. She understood that trying wasn't always enough, that the world could crush you no matter how hard you worked, how good you were, how much you deserved better. That's when she started noticing the safe. Her mother brought her along to the Ashford estate on Saturdays when she couldn't afford a sitter. "Stay invisible," Maria always said. "Don't touch anything. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't give them any reason to notice you." Elena was good at being invisible. She'd slip through the mansion's corridors like a ghost, reading the books in Ashford's library while he hosted meetings in other rooms, studying the paintings no one looked at anymore, listening to conversations people had when they forgot the help could hear. Richard Ashford loved talking about his safe. It was his favorite party trick, his signature bit of theater. $100 million, he'd announced to dinner guests, investors, journalists. "That's what's inside. Cash, bonds, the key to offshore accounts. Open it and it's yours. But here's the catch nobody can. 16 digits, custom algorithm, changes every 72 hours based on a pattern only I understand. Best minds in cybersecurity have tried. All failed." He'd laugh, that booming laugh of someone who'd never been truly afraid of anything. It's a monument to the fact that some things can't be bought or hacked. Some things require actual genius. What he meant was, some things require being someone like him. Elena heard differently. She heard a man so certain of his superiority that he'd turned his own arrogance into a puzzle, and puzzles were something she understood. Her father had taught her to see patterns everywhere, in music, in nature, in the way people moved through space. "Mathematics isn't just numbers, Elena," he'd said. "It's the language of truth. Learn to read it and you can read the world." She'd been reading since she was 4, calculus by 8. Her father used to joke she'd solve problems he assigned his college students, then explain them in ways they could finally understand. But none of that mattered after he died. Schools in their neighborhood were overcrowded, understaffed, drowning in their own survival. A gifted girl without money or connections was just another struggling student, another name on a roster too long for anyone to truly see. But in Ashford's study, While her mother scrubbed floors 3 rooms away, Elena saw. The safe sat behind a painting of Ashford shaking hands with 2 presidents. She'd studied it across 6 Saturdays, watching the digital display, nodding when the numbers changed, tracking the pattern everyone assumed was random. It wasn't random. Nothing truly was if you looked close enough. She started sketching the sequences in her father's old notebooks. At night, while her mother slept the sleep of the utterly exhausted, Elena worked by flashlight. The algorithm revealed itself slowly, like a photograph developing. It was based on prime number distributions, she realized, but not standard progressions. Ashford had been clever. He'd created a custom sequence tied to specific dates. It took her 11 days to understand. The pattern reset based on significant dates in Ashford's life. His birthday, his company's founding, his wedding anniversary. Narcissism encoded as mathematics. She could open it. The realization hit her like electricity. She actually could. But then came the harder question, should she? Elena wasn't naive. She knew what theft was, knew the difference between right and wrong. Her father had taught her that too. Justice and law aren't always the same thing, he'd said once, during a dinner conversation she barely remembered. But that doesn't mean we get to decide which rules to follow. That path leads nowhere good. Yet she also knew that justice meant her mother shouldn't work herself to death for $12 an hour. Justice meant a child shouldn't lose their home because medical bills from saving a father's life, a futile effort, buried them in debt. Justice meant people like Ashford shouldn't hoard wealth they could never spend while people like her mother bled themselves dry for crumbs. The world wasn't just. Maybe that meant the rules weren't either. She was still wrestling with this when the annual gala arrived. The event Ashford threw for investors and politicians, and people who shaped the world from rooms poor people would never enter. Her mother needed to work it, which meant Elena came along, tucked into corners, invisible as always. That's when she saw the children. Not Ashford's children. His kids were grown, running divisions of his empire. These were other children, brought by wealthy parents, dressed in clothes that cost more than Elena's mother made in a month. They ran through the mansion shrieking with laughter, grabbing hors d'oeuvres from trays, treating the staff like furniture. One boy, maybe 9, knocked a tray from a server's hands and laughed when shrimp scattered across the floor. His mother didn't correct him. She was too busy networking, champagne glass in hand, discussing a charity gala for disadvantaged youth with a woman dripping in diamonds. Elena watched the server, a young man, probably 20, drop to his knees to clean it up. His hands shook slightly. His jaw was tight. She recognized that expression. Her mother wore it constantly. Pathetic, isn't it? Elena turned. A girl about her age stood beside her, wearing a black dress that probably cost what her mother made in 6 months. The girl was watching the scene with detached amusement. What? Elena asked. How desperate they are. The staff, I mean. My dad says if they had any real talent, they wouldn't be servants. It's just natural selection, right? Some people are meant to serve. The girl said it casually, like discussing the weather. She believed it absolutely. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not anger exactly, something colder, a crystallizing of understanding. These people would never see her, would never see her mother, would never question whether their wealth was earned or simply taken. They believed their own mythology so completely that challenging it was pointless. You couldn't shame people who felt no shame. That's when Ashford took the stage. That's when he started his annual speech, his safe projected on the screen behind him. That's when he told his joke about the $100 million nobody could claim. Genius recognizes genius, he said, spreading his arms wide. That's the real treasure inside. The proof that some people simply operate on a higher level. It's not arrogance if it's true. The crowd laughed with him. They always did. Elena didn't plan what happened next. The mop bucket was nearby, left by another worker. Her foot connected with it accidentally, or maybe not. Maybe some buried part of her needed to make noise, needed to shatter the perfect surface of their certainty. The crash brought silence. The stairs followed. Her mother's grip on her shoulder felt like iron. But Elena was looking at the screen, at the safe's digital display, at the numbers that suddenly made perfect sense. "I can open it," she said. The words came out steady, clear, cutting through the ballroom silence like a bell. Her mother's grip tightened. "Elena, no, don't." "I can open your safe, Mr. Ashford. I know the code." Someone laughed, then another. The sound rippled through the crowd like a wave. A child in a cleaning uniform claiming she could do what experts couldn't. It was absurd, offensive, hilarious. Ashford's expression cycled through confusion, amusement, and something harder. "Sweetheart," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "Very cute, but adults are talking. Why don't you run along?" "I'm not joking," Elena said. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice didn't shake. "Your algorithm resets every 72 hours based on a prime number sequence derived from significant dates in your personal history. Today's code should be 271952311741628 The ballroom went dead silent. Ashford's smile froze, his eyes narrowed. "That's your guessing." "No, sir. I've studied the pattern for 3 months. I can show you the math." Someone in the crowd whispered to their companion. Others pulled out phones. The girl in the black dress stared at Elena like she'd grown a second head. Ashford's face reddened. "This is ridiculous, security." "Let her try," someone called out. Elena recognized him, Senator Morrison from the news. "What's the harm? If she's wrong, we all have a good laugh. If she's right," he shrugged, smiling like this was the best entertainment he'd seen in years. "Well, that's a hell of a story." The crowd murmured agreement. They wanted the show. They always wanted the show. Ashford was trapped. Backing down would make him look afraid. And he'd spent years telling everyone his safe was impossible to crack. He couldn't imagine a 12-year-old girl had actually done it. "Fine," he said coldly. "Let's embarrass this child properly." They walked through the mansion like a parade. Ashford in front, Elena behind him, her mother clutching her hand, whispering, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" in Spanish. The crowd followed, phones out, already filming. The study felt smaller with 50 people crammed inside. The safe loomed on the wall, its titanium surface reflecting the chandelier's light. The digital pad glowed, waiting. "Go ahead," Ashford said, gesturing dismissively. "Embarrass yourself." Elena approached the safe. Her hands were steadier than they should have been. She thought of her father, of his notebooks, of the way he'd taught her that numbers were truth even when people lied. She entered the code. 271952311741628 For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the safe clicked. The titanium door swung open. The silence was so complete Elena could hear her own heartbeat. Inside, exactly as Ashford had promised, were stacks of bearer bonds, cash, and a small book she assumed contained account numbers. $100 million, give or take. Ashford's face went white, then red, then something beyond color into pure rage. "You stole the code," he hissed. "You broke into my computer, you." "I never touched your computer," Elena said quietly. "I watched the safe display change every Saturday for 12 weeks. I tracked the pattern. I used mathematics, the same mathematics you used to create it." A woman in the crowd, someone Elena recognized as a tech journalist, was filming everything, eyes wide. Did a 12-year-old girl just crack Richard Ashford's impossible safe using pattern recognition and prime number theory? "She cheated," Ashford snapped. "She must have." "Prove it," Senator Morrison said, still smiling. "Because from where I'm standing, you just got outsmarted by a kid whose mother cleans your house." The words hung in the air. Ashford stared at Elena with naked hatred. She stared back, no longer invisible, no longer afraid. "You said anyone who opened it could have what's inside," she said. "Everyone heard you. For years, you've been saying it. Don't be absurd. That was a joke, a hypothetical you can't seriously." "A contract witnessed by 50 people," the journalist said, phone still recording. "This is incredible. Ashford, are you really going to back out of your promise in front of everyone?" The crowd waited, the phones filmed, the moment stretched. Ashford's voice dropped to something low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you've done, little girl." But Elena did. She'd exposed him, not as a criminal or a monster, but as something worse in his world, as ordinary. As someone who could be beaten. As someone whose genius was just arrogance wrapped in opportunity he'd been born into. The story went viral within hours. Girl genius cracks billionaire's safe dominated news cycles. Lawyers appeared, some working for Ashford, others pro bono for Elena, arguing about the validity of a public promise. The internet exploded with debates about wealth inequality, artificial barriers to opportunity, and what it meant that a child in poverty had capabilities Ashford's paid experts lacked. Ashford fought, threatened, used every legal weapon his money could buy. But he'd made his promise publicly, repeatedly, for years. And in the age of video evidence and social media, backing out made him look worse than paying up. The settlement came 3 months later. Not the full 100 million, lawyers bled off portions and Ashford fought for every dollar. But Elena and her mother walked away with enough to secure their future. College fully funded, medical bills erased, a home bought outright, small but theirs. Maria Martinez cried when they signed the papers. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered, "and so terrified." Elena understood both. Her father had taught her to see patterns, to value truth over comfort. But he'd also known how dangerous it was to challenge people who believed their power was proof of their worth. On their last day in the Ashford estate, while Maria collected her final paycheck, Elena walked through the study one last time. The safe was gone, removed to an undisclosed location. The room felt smaller without it. She thought about the girl in the black dress, who'd said some people were meant to serve. She wondered if that girl would ever question what she'd been taught, or if she'd go through life believing her privilege was earned, her wealth deserved, her position natural. Probably not. Most people never did. But maybe some kid somewhere, watching the news, seeing Elena's story, would realize that being overlooked didn't mean being worthless. That genius wasn't the property of the wealthy. That the patterns everyone else missed were visible if you knew how to look. That sometimes, the invisible people saw everything. Elena picked up one of her father's notebooks, left behind in the room months ago, forgotten. She opened it to a random page. An equation stared back at her, her father's handwriting still clear and strong. At the bottom he'd written, "Truth doesn't care about power, it simply is." She closed the notebook and walked out of the mansion for the last time, her mother's hand in hers, both of them finally free. The world wouldn't change overnight. People like Ashford would still exist, still hoard, still believe their own mythology. But Elena had proven something important, that their walls could be breached, their codes broken, their certainty shattered. Not with violence, not with rage. With truth, with patience, with the stubborn belief that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all.